With what looks like the final nail in the Kelvin universe Star Trek IV coffin, I'd like to talk about what I think we need as Trek fans. And then, Alex Kurtzman, I know you're listening. I have a pitch for a Trek movie that should blow the box office up for both Trekkies and non-Trek fans alike. Gene Roddenberry's behemoth, Star Trek, has given rise to 13 feature films as of this writing, and personally, I think only a few of them have succeeded. Why is it that in a franchise of more than 800 episodes on television, its movie adaptations rarely hit a home run? The answer is gray areas. The reason Star Wars works better on the big screen is its good versus evil, clean-cut black and white writing that can be told in 2 or so hours at a time, telling good episodic stories in and of themselves, while still building longer arcs over multiple sequels. There are clear-cut villains, and it appeals to a broad audience. It's no wonder then that some of the best Trek movies were also in a trilogy format, and with one exception, haven't risen to those cinematic heights since the 80s. And even here seem to stray away from the shades of gray storytelling, no, not that shades of gray, that explore complex real-world problems through moral quandaries for our characters. This doesn't usually make for great cinema, and the worst example of that is probably Insurrection, which even has a clean-cut villain, but the plot feels more derivative of a classic episodic formula that didn't translate well to a 2-hour model. So, if to have wide appeal, you need to both get your core fans on board and tell a story that a wider audience can watch without having to know anything about the Star Trek universe. It's the big screen, so lots of action and characters we get to care about without ever having to know their names going into it, and I think Star Wars has already shown its cousin Trek the blueprint of how to achieve this in Rogue One, a movie that's both detached from the core franchise while telling an in-universe story that's been teased in many other episodes of Trek. This has to be rated PG-13 or R because it doesn't have a happy ending. There is just enough lore surrounding this story. We have heard glimpses of this conflict as told by a familiar character. It's an action-packed story, and there's some moral gray area. Within the run of Trek, one much-talked-about event has enough in-universe clues to make a feature-length movie that would give die-hard Trekkies and the general movie-consuming public something to take notice of. Setlick 3. And here is my brief outline of what that could look like. We're dropped straight into the USS Rutledge, a New Orleans-class starship, in the middle of a battle with a dozen other Federation ships of various design and 9 Cardassian warships. Captain Ben Maxwell dictates some brilliant maneuvers to his helmsman and young tactical officer Miles O'Brien to help secure a victory, though one ensign will die on the bridge in the battle to signify the tone of this movie. The Federation fleet disperses the Cardassian ships from orbit of Setlick 3, and the Rutledge and another Federation ship remain behind at the planet to begin relief efforts and to combat the ongoing and entrenched Cardassians already engaged in a ground assault, while the rest of the fleet chase the Cardassian ships back to their territory. The ship's first officer leads a combat team comprised of crewman O'Brien, Boone, and Caden, along with 14 others, along with 18 officers from the other Federation ship, against the Cardassians' primary position, the Barika encampment. They rally half a kilometer outside the perimeter, and the commander leading the mission dies early, having set off a booby trap that takes a few others with him. This is when O'Brien assumes command of the remaining unit as the lead tactical officer and wages a guerrilla war against the Cardassians over the course of an evening. You can see him building his engineering skills by, at some point, disarming another one of the traps that killed the original commander. They'll lose most of their men, including Caden, and Boone will fall into a Cardassian trap, and later become a Cardassian prisoner, though will be presumed dead for now. As morning rises on the base, it will appear after much action and engineering intrigue that their teams have either wiped out or captured all the Cardassians, until it's revealed that the Federation fleet from the beginning of the movie has been destroyed, and several Cardassian ships have returned to orbit. They'll destroy the other Federation ship in orbit and damage the Rutledge's transporters, among other systems, which will force non-engineer O'Brien to repair a field transporter during a firefight to get himself and a dozen survivors back to the Rutledge. which itself is under attack and not looking too good, being pinned down by 2 of the Cardassian ships. Just when Maxwell is about to order abandoned ship and a collision course with the nearest Cardassian ship, another Starfleet vessel enters the picture, the USS Stargazer, commanded by Picard, who's able to surprise the Cardassians and take out 1 ship with his opening volley. This gives the Rutledge a hole to escape and buys the engineering team just enough time to get the warp drive online. Both ships barely escape with their lives. Roll credits over the remainder of the battle scene with no post-closure to keep the audience wanting just a smidge more. So we've got characters we care about, history that's been hinted at filled in, the right amount of action, and ethical and moral gray areas within the storyline. Now that's a movie I'd go see.